Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation, and welcome back to the channel, John McCoy from Gillan and lots of other bands. Welcome, John. It's a pleasure to have you back on the channel. How are you going?
I'm not too bad, thank you, Peter. Yeah, things are pretty good, thank you.
Look, John, I have to say that the response to the interview that we had about a month or two back has been unprecedented for Rock Daydream Nation. I think one of the clips that we did has amassed about 46,000 views. The band is defunct after the last concert at Wembley. One of the questions one of my viewers asked, and it's an interesting question: did the band ever think about getting a new singer and continuing as a recording and live act, albeit maybe under a different name? Did you consider that?
Yeah, briefly we did consider it, but you know, you got to remember that everyone was in shock, and the band at that time, you know, Yannick Gers was in the band, and so you know, Yannick was a separate issue. He wasn't involved in the argument over the royalties, and we did consider it. We got as far as doing a demo with my friend and singer Tony T-Bone Reese, who sang on a lot of the McCoy things.
Right.
We did a demo, Nick Underwood, myself, Colin Towns, Bernie Tormé, of a song called Night Lights. And it went pretty well.
Yeah.
And we also, maybe it sounds like a joke now, but there was a girl singer called Nikki Brooks, who also works with McCoy. And because of the name problem, you know, how could we continue the success of the band called Gillan without Ian Gillan being in the band? It wouldn't have to be a new name.
Yeah.
So if we had this girl singer, we could call the band Gillian, and it would look quite similar. But it never really happened.
Viewer was alluding to that you had such a chemistry with that band. I mean, take Ian out, you had such a great chemistry as players. Get somebody like a Glenn Hughes or somebody to front it. Yeah, I got a little bit of feedback along those lines. Just interested to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, it could have happened, but we were just we were floundering. You know, to have done it with Bernie would have been probably the best choice. But you know, after Bernie left the band mid-tour, he had great lawyers, took Ian and his management to court, sued them, and got a nice payout. So Bernie was in slightly, you know, different situation then. He'd left them, and we continued with Yannick. You know, we did discuss it, but it just didn't feel right. You know, the magic was gone, really.
I've got some questions to kind of celebrate the good bits with Gillan. I'd be really interested to get your personal reflections and recollections of some songs, and a lot of them were written by you, and a lot of them are my favorites. So I'd be really pleased if you could just reflections on these songs. Mr. Universe, what do you recall of that particular song?
Mr. Universe, that was when, let's see, it's a great track. It's one of Colin Towns' magical moments for me. I think the magic in that song happens when in the guitar and drum solo, you know, the rest of the band keyboards and bass all drop out, vocals drop out, and Bernie and Mick take off. And for me, that's a wonderful moment. It's a great song, and it's one of the best.
And did you think that the band had arrived? Because it did really well. It charted. Did you think we're onto something really special here with this album?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'd been working towards that kind of success. You know, I started in the 60s, and that kind of success was what I'd always been working towards. And I can remember I actually fell on the floor when we got the message. We were at the hotel in Bradford in England, and we were on tour. And the message came through to the hotel that the Mr. Universe album had just charted at number 11. And I literally fell on the floor and was that happy. Yeah, of course. We thought, this is it. We're on our way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Next song, Sleeping on the Job. What do you think of that one?
Oh, it's just a good boogie shuffle, isn't it? It was a good time band, and Sleeping on the Job. And also the lyric was tongue-in-cheek, sort of dig at, lyrically a little dig at the way of the British workman wasn't working.
Right, the work ethic sort of thing. And you seem to enjoy these sort of songs because you're really in the pocket on the bottom end with the bass chugging along. And did you enjoy those like boogie songs? You know, getting in the groove.
Yeah, I love to play. To me, the feel is the most important thing, and to lay down the groundwork for the vocalist, soloists to play over. You know, I think most bass players in bands are sort of probably dismissed a lot of the time, but without the bass and drums, there is no band. And I love that kind of that bluesy, basic shuffle thing. You know, it's just a personal thing. You know, not that I've always done that kind of thing. I've been in many different bands in different genres. I played in folk bands, folk rock. I had a band called Zebra in the 70s, and we did three albums, I think, and that was kind of Afro jazz rock. We played at Ronnie Scott's club, toured with Chick Corea. You know, that's quite complicated jazz, and all which is enjoyable, but nothing beats that straight ahead bluesy kind of rock feel for me.
Absolutely. And speaking of blues, If You Believe Me, great song. This has got a lot of feel to it. This is a kind of a slight change of direction, really pushing the bluesy influence of Gillan. Did you enjoy playing this sort of song?
Yeah, I love that song. I mean, I came up with the basic riff of that. Not that it's anything special, but it works very well. It was a great song for playing live. You know, once again, it gave Colin and Bernie the opportunity to shine, and
Ian as well, just to stretch things out and make it dramatic.
The thing that I have to say on that song, and a lot of the songs at that time, Ian, I think, was at his peak vocally and creatively. You know, in that band, he probably didn't realize it at the time, but he had more freedom than he'd had before. I think that it shows that everyone, it was a great lineup. It was a great combination of players.
Just a quick question, like Ian, when he joined Black Sabbath, obviously I know your views on that, but did you notice a change in him vocally when you heard Perfect Strangers? Because I've got a theory that he may have blown a gasket with his larynx or his vocals on that tour, if not maybe at the tail end of Gillan. Was it noticeable to you even on the Perfect Strangers album that vocally he had changed?
Yeah, it did seem to change, didn't it? Maybe whatever. I think he maybe had his tonsils out or something. Maybe something changed there, physically. But there really something changed. But I found it difficult to listen in those days. I'd have a quick listen, but it was kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah, with the personal attachment side of it. Yeah, I understand.
Ian sort of ruined my two favorite bands. My two favorite bands were Gillan and Black Sabbath. And I don't think the Black Sabbath album worked. Some people do, but it didn't work for me. I was biased. It was hard to hear any of it without that overhanging spectre behind.
When Ian went on stage, did he ever do vocal warm-ups, or he'd go in cold? What was your observation?
No, I don't think he did, actually. No, he just went on and did it. He was ready at all times.
Glass of lager or a scotch or nothing, just straight in?
A little drink of something, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Future Shock. Tell us about that album, because that was it was sort of going something for a little bit science fiction, a little bit futuristic.
Yeah, it's a great album. And, shame about the cover artwork, but
not a fan.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the album. I think
no, the album cover. You're not a fan of the album cover?
No, I think it was somebody got carried away, and I don't think the cartoon versions of us on that cover are pretty bad. But as an album, it didn't. I mean, the song "Future Shock" didn't come across how I wanted it to. It was actually a little bit faster than when I wrote the original riff. And it seemed a little bit jerky to me. It sounded a little bit thin to me. It kind of lacked the power of Glory Road. But it was full of great songs.
All right, so then we get into Double Trouble, and I'll Rip Your Spine Out, which is one of my favorites because your bass is so beefy and just brought up to it, to the fore, and it's almost punky, and we've spoken about this. Was that any intention in the sonics of that song to make it a little bit more punky and spiky?
Well, that may have been, after my comments about Future Shock. When I got involved, as I said, I worked with Colin Towns. He'd done sessions for me, and obviously he must have liked my production ideas and sound. And when we did Glory Road, Mr. Universe, I tried to introduce, that harder, heavier element to the band. And I think the Double Trouble album, a little bit more of that came in. I think it worked really well. Yeah. And of course, we then had Yannick,
Yep.
who, he brought a kind of fresh approach. He was in a band that I had produced called White Spirit, and they were part of that new Wobbum, the new wave of British heavy metal. They were one of those bands, and Yannick brought in a little bit of that heavier element, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. In listening to Magic, I can tell that there's a different sort of a sonic change. Even the way that the songs are arranged seem to be completely different. It's a lot more commercial sounding. The song I want to highlight with you is "What's the Matter." What's your reflections of that song?
Yeah, it's one of mine. What's the matter? Or it should have been, what is the matter? But that album, I think Ian wanted to get into what he conceived to be a more commercial sound. He brought in a producer called Mick Glossop, very good producer, but to me, the albums, compared to the earlier stuff, it sounds a little bit bland. It's a little bit smoothed off. Just in it, and
you think it lost its edge? The band lost its edge a little bit in that album.
It kind of lost the British sound.
Yeah,
and I think there was an attempt to be more of the American AOR that sound,
Yeah.
I don't really think that was what that band was about. It worked. Some great songs. What's the Matter? It's a good song, but it's kind of, I had a lot of songs ready at that time, and the ones that were chosen to be were the commercial side of what I was writing at the time, as it was with Colin. And I don't know, bands just progress from one thing to the next, different people involved in the band. The whole sound of the band changed, and who knows what it could have become, when the whole thing finished at the end of the tour. As I said, I believed that we were taking a lengthy break for Ian's voice to recover. I already had songs ready for the next album. I had previously done arrangements of old songs which were hits, Trouble and New Orleans. I had cover versions ready, different arrangements of songs, one of which was Oh Well, which incredibly years later Purple did as a cover. It's those songs were ready for me for the album after Magic, but of course that was never to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us the story about Richie Blackmore jamming with Gillan at the Rainbow Theatre in London. Were you aware that Richie had made an overture to Ian to join Rainbow? Were you aware of that?
Yeah, well, absolutely. We never had any misconceptions about Ian and what could have happened in the future. If he'd said, look, guys, I'm going back we're reforming Purple, and we'd have totally understood. That would have made sense. But when Richie was approaching Ian to join Rainbow, Gillan was really doing well, and Ian, I presume, that there wasn't enough in it for Ian,
right,
to join Rainbow, because he wouldn't have been in control of the money at all. It was, I don't know what the arrangement would have been financially, but it's a weird thing, because Richie jammed with us on another gig at the Marquee earlier, and that was when Steve Bird was still in the band. I think that they have got a love-hate relationship, and love what they've done together, and but they just cannot get on. And I know the feeling, but who knows what was actually and what was offered? You'd have to ask Ian about that. But
absolutely. So, from a musical point of view, was it with the jam? What was it like? A loose sort of jam?
Yeah. I mean, there was nothing planned at all. It just happened.
Spontaneous.
Remarkable player, and thank you, Richie. He complimented me a couple of times on my playing, and I could only say thank you. I mean, I'd been a fan of his since the times that I said before that I was in the support band to Purple. I can remember being behind his amplifier stack, holding the thing up while he rocked his guitar into them. I felt involved, and I really, really rate his playing. Even now, the odd things that he's doing, I still really rate his playing. He's a remarkable talent. Remarkable.
Were there any live concert highlights playing with Gillan that you still reminisce and just think, wow, that was magic? Maybe it might be a reading festival, something that particularly sticks out to you to this very day.
They were all magical events. Every show had special moments for me. I loved every one, and there were some funny things that happened. I remember I used to be very active on stage, and we played a show at a little gig in the early days, a place called Retford, which I think is Nottinghamshire or somewhere around there. And I managed to bounce around that much that I went through the floor of the stage and had to finish the show submerged in half a stage, and left my guitar hanging out the ceiling. Crazy things like that. Just taking risks. One of the greatest risks that I took was met the guy who did the flying sequences in Superman. We were rehearsing at Shepperton Sound Studios, is where the films were made. A lot of the films were made. And I met the guy who did the flying for Superman films, and talked to him, and eventually, cut the story short, we were able to fix up flying harness for me, and on certain shows, I would get hoisted in the air, and it's kind of weird because one of the releases that came out from Reading Festival, the live thing, there's a bass solo on there, and to be honest, it sounds pretty awful, but the crowd are cheering like crazy, and that's because while I was doing the solo, I was being hoisted in the air.
Needed visuals.
Another night, I think it was Glasgow, the famous Apollo, organized the flying sequence, and we didn't have a professional guy to do it. It was just one of the roadies who would do the weights and pull the string and hoist me into the air. The guy who was in it got it slightly wrong, and I was flying around in the air like across the stage, and came very, very close to demolishing Mick Underwood's kit. And he told the story much better than me, how terrifying it was for him seeing me flying through the air towards him. Things like that are memories that no one else has got, and they're good memories. Yeah,
absolutely. Is there anything in the vault from a filming perspective that you suspect that may not have been released and needs to be released? Was Gillan filmed a bit?
Not as much as I think there were. I haven't seen a lot. I'm sure there's stuff there, but it's back in the days in the 80s. There weren't that many video cameras around.
Yeah.
Like now, everybody films everything on their phone.
Yeah, sure do.
I mean, there was a DVD that was released from Edinburgh, 1980, a live show from Edinburgh, and on that DVD is just getting back to the argument again. Just in case people think it was only me, there's interviews on there with myself, Bernie Tormé, Mick Underwood, and Colin Towns, giving their versions of their disappointments of what happened to the band. But that was a DVD of a concert in Edinburgh, which I remember being very good. I think it came out probably 20 years ago, 2006, 2007, something like that. But there must be lots of other footage around.
All right, let's talk about McCoy. So you mentioned you recorded the Fleetwood Mac song, Oh Well, and that came out in 1983. What actually attracted you to that particular song?
Oh, it's just the best riff, isn't it? I always loved that guitar riff, and as I said, I was fond of doing rearrangements of classic songs, and it occurred to me that my arrangement of that, like the up-tempo version of it, was an ideal vehicle for the next Gillan single or album.
Yeah.
That's just one of the things that I had ready for the next Gillan album, but it was not to be. I just to continue to record that with Tony Reese doing the singing.
Yeah. You had a certain chemistry with Paul Samson as both your careers kind of weave in and out over the remainder of the 80s. Can you describe the chemistry you actually had with Paul?
Well, I met Paul. Going back in time, I was in a band with Bernie Tormé called Scrapyard, and we tried very hard. It was 3-piece. We couldn't get arrested, basically. And Bernie decided to go off, and he started the Bernie Tormé band. I stuck with the drummer from that band, Roger Hunt. He introduced me to Paul Samson, and we clicked immediately. Paul grew up liking the same sort of things as me, you know. We enjoyed the blues. He liked the pretty things, so did I. And we just clicked. It's just one of those things, you know, certain people you just immediately connect with. And we started writing together. And we went out and did a few shows as McCoy. And as that continued, I became quite busy on doing various sessions, a lot of which, you know, I was doing production and bass sessions. A lot of them were at Kingsway Recorders. So we decided, I mean, Paul wanted to change drummers, and he introduced a young guy called Clive Burr, who was a fantastic drummer. And then McCoy evolved into Samson, and the band became Samson, and we continued to play basically the same songs. In fact, we played a couple of gigs one week as McCoy and the next week as Samson, but that's another story. As I say, Clive Burr came into the band, and we did a single called Telephone, a song that I'd written. And there was an offer of management, I think. And as I say, I was getting offered all kinds of things, one of which was to do the Gillan Japanese album. And at the same time, I was doing the first Samson album. And my feelings were that I had to go with Colin and start the Gillan band. And Paul totally understood that for me was a step up. But I finished the Samson album with him and encouraged him to continue. So he then brought in Chris Aylmer to play bass. We continued as friends, of course, and I got Samson support gigs on Gillan tours.
Yep.
We kept in touch all the time through the ups and downs of Gillan, and I did an album with Paul called Joint Forces. I think that Nicky Moore was the singer on that, and he was incredible. And eventually, I worked with Nicky and formed Mammoth. But Paul was a real, I don't know how to say it. He's a British blues player, and he had that certain blues attitude. He would play anywhere. He didn't care if it was 3 people in the gig or 3,000. He'd always give 100%. He was a great player, and he had a lot of soul in his playing. I really rated him. You know, when we left Gillan, Paul was one of the people on the list, on my list anyway, of replacements. For me, he would have been a great replacement for Bernie. There were a lot of good people on that list. Yannick was just one of them. I would have liked Richie to join. But,
yeah, absolutely. You were asked to write and form a band to back the Anthrax singer Joey Belladonna.
right.
How did that come about, and what was the result?
Chaos, I think, was the result. I was approached by another connection through Paul Samson, actually. He'd been over in New York playing with a guy called Al Romano, who was a big Samson fan, and Al Romano got in touch with me and said, you know, there's a situation here. Joey Belladonna from Anthrax wants to get in touch with you. So Joey basically said, you know, I like your playing, I like your songwriting. How about getting together, doing some songs and recording a Belladonna album? So I said, well, yeah, sounds like a good idea. So from that moment, I made an agreement, went out there and met up with Al Romano, fantastic guitarist. I was invited up to Al's place, stayed at his home. He had a great rehearsal room in the basement. And we discussed, you know, what we would get as a drummer. I think we tried out Les Binks from
Judas Priest.
The guys. But eventually we got in a guy from a New York band called From the Fire, Mike Ciotto, brilliant drummer. And I had all these songs written, ready for Joey Belladonna. And a lot of them were, I don't know, it was right across the board. I'd written a lot of songs. And so we started rehearsing. But at that time, Anthrax suddenly took off in a bigger way because they had a huge hit with Public Enemy. And they became very busy. And so Joey said, well, you know, rehearse the songs, do some demos, give me a few weeks and I'll be available. Well, that dragged on. And so I started doing demos with Al Romano, doing the vocals and lead guitar. And, you know, he was a remarkable young guy. He'd never done an album before. And he didn't realize that he could sing even. And we did these songs, and some of them were the right kind of thing for Joey Belladonna and the Belladonna project, and some of them were not. But we had all this time to waste while Joey was free to start his album. So it went on for, you know, a couple of months like that. And we recorded a lot of songs. And eventually, Joey was available. And the idea was to go up to Joey's house, where he lived, Syracuse. And we went up there, myself, Al Romano, Mike Ciotto, and started the songs with Joey. Unfortunately, Joey didn't get on too well with Mike, the drummer, and wanted to change drummers, which kind of slowed things up a bit. And there were a couple of drummers tried out. We did a kind of showcase of Joey's house for some record company guys, and there was quite a lot of interest in it. But Joey was kind of unsure about the direction he wanted to go in, whether to stay in that kind of Anthrax world or, you know, he had another side to him, which was much more of an AOR kind of approach, and some of the songs I'd written fitted that. So he was unsure of the direction, and while all these deliberations were going on, I got a phone call from home that my mum had been taken into hospital. Things didn't look good, and could I go back, to see her, as it could have been the last time. So I said, look, guys, I'm going to go home, and I'll be back in a week or so. And I went home to see my mum in hospital, and sadly she died. And I talked to Joey, and he'd sort of gone off the idea and said, look, you're having a hard time, and maybe don't come back. Let's just leave it at that. And I think he continued to do some of the songs that I'd written and recorded some of them. I think it actually came out as a CD sometime after that, under the Belladonna name, but it just kind of fizzled out, unfortunately. Things just happen the way that they happen, and Anthrax really sort of took him over again,
Yeah, that they were becoming quite successful in that era. So out of that, how did it kind of evolve into Sun Red Sun, in which Ray Gillan, the late Ray Gillan, recorded a few of your songs? Can you tell us about this and your interactions and maybe impressions of Ray, however brief?
Sun Red Sun was really, I was back in UK by this time.
Yep.
Sun Red Sun was really Al Romano's project. And, Al still had access to some of the masters of the songs that we'd recorded for Joey. And he played some of the songs to Ray Gillan. And Ray really flatteringly called me and said, I love these songs. In particular was a song called Outrageous, and another song called I Know a Place, which, as I say, I'd written for Joey, and those Al still had the master tapes. So he said, I love those songs. Is it okay? And I said, sure. I rated Ray Gillan as a singer. Some of the things that he'd done with Badlands and the Sabbath stuff. He was a great singer, but he had a lot of problems. He was doing a lot of stuff that he shouldn't have done. And he wasn't very well. And when he spoke to me, he sounded kind of crazy. But I said, please go ahead. And he recorded those songs with Al in control. And I think he kind of emulated Al Romano's performance of those songs. Whereas if I'd been at the sessions with Ray, I would have got him to do a lot more than he actually did. But in fact, that song, I Know a Place, is the last song that Ray Gillan ever recorded. And he was to die quite shortly after.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that I've worked with have died. Oh, dear.
Yeah. let's talk about Bernie Tormé. So when Bernie left Gillan, did you still keep in contact even after the demise of Gillan after Magic? Did you still keep in contact?
Oh, sure.
Because you were very close, weren't you, with Bernie?
Yeah, I was very close to Bernie, you know, from the days of the Scrapyard Band.
Right.
You know, I produced, when he had the Bernie Tormé Band, I produced singles and an album for him. Always kept in touch. And
did he talk to you about the experience he had with briefly with Ozzy covering for Randy Rhoads? I'd be interested to, you know, did he give you any recollections or any sort of...
He did. He just, you know, that was an incredible thing to do.
Yes.
And, you know, he saw it as a great opportunity, but kind of weird, you know, a very weird situation to step into, basically the guy's shoes. You know, he did a really good job, but he felt uncomfortable in that band. You know, he wasn't Randy Rhoads, and he'd had a couple of times where people were actually calling him Randy, and he just didn't feel comfortable in the situation. I think if more time had passed when he'd been asked to join with Ozzy, then it could have become a much more permanent thing. But just the way that it happened so quickly, very strange for him. Very, very strange.
And very ballsy for him to do it, because he had to learn a full song set in such a short time. So I think it, you know, very ballsy, wasn't it?
You put people under pressure and they deliver. The same thing is evident with Yannick Gers. He learned the Gillan set in a couple of days. You know, you put people under pressure and they'll come up with the goods. Bernie did a fantastic job. But, you know, as I say, he felt uncomfortable when, you know, people at the front of the stage were shouting Randy up at him. You know, how could that feel? Very, very odd. But I mean, you know, we remained friends, and we continued to work together.
GMT. So you reunited with him in GMT in 2006. Was he a different player to what he was in Gillan? Did you notice a change, or was it the same Bernie?
It's the same guy playing the same riffs. And his sound had cleaned up a little bit. That was one thing that I noticed. You know, he was his own man, and the sound that came out of his amps was difficult to record. He cleaned up the sound a little bit, and he had a couple of new riffs, and he was playing good. And we got together. Initially, we got together with Mick Underwood, just the three-piece. But Bernie quite rightly said, you know, playing with Mick, we're just treading old ground here. And he'd met a drummer, Robin Guy, and said, check this guy out, which I did. Robin Guy, an incredible player. And you know, he's a few years younger than us, and he had a certain energy which injected into the GMT band. And we just enjoyed playing together. Bernie and I had a certain almost telepathic empathy. When we were jamming, we could just read what each other were going to do and take the songs on a different route. And when we were recording those albums, we got Colin Towns in to do keyboards on the album. And one of the rules that we made between ourselves was when Colin was around and me and Bernie, we'd say, "Don't mention the war." And
that's code for.
We definitely stayed away from the conversation about the Gillan split, and we just got with playing together and enjoying it again. And GMT was a great band, but it never really happened. Bernie, from his experiences, he had his own studio, he had his own record label, and he wanted it to be all in-house and for the albums to come out on his label. And it seemed like a good idea at the time, but we didn't have management, and there was no promotion involved. We were playing just little pub gigs everywhere, and we did a couple of big festivals, which were great. But after, I think, during the recording of the third album, we'd done 2 studio albums and a live album, and we were working on another thing. And we agreed, that we would kind of just recovering the same ground. I personally thought that we needed a singer, to allow Bernie to be Bernie Tormé, the guitarist. He was covering all the vocals and the guitar work. And I felt that we needed a singer in the band. But Bernie didn't want to do that. So we gradually ground to a halt. And that was that. We tried. And there's a couple of great albums from GMT. And there's a couple of videos out there. It was good. It was good times.
Yeah. I guess 2006 wasn't a good time for hard rock and heavy metal. Maybe it wasn't the right time.
It kind of goes in waves, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, way back, in the sort of mid to late 70s, there was a huge change when punk came in. A lot of the bands, one of which was my own band, Zebra, and also IGB, were dropped by record companies because they were too expensive compared to signing a punk band, which was a lot cheaper because their recordings were cheaper, and there were lots of different reasons. But record companies were dropping, classic rock bands when punk came in, and it was kind of a wave that happened then. And then, like you say, around the 2006-07 mark, there was kind of a lull in the market. The heavy rock just wasn't happening at that time. It does seem to be waves.
It does. With Black Sabbath's last gig this weekend at Birmingham, what do you think is the secret to the longevity of many of those bands of that era, Purple being another one? Because there's still a lot of those old bands that are playing and treading the boards. What do you think is the secret? Great songs?
Yeah, the originals are the best, let's face it. And Sabbath, for me, are the originals of heavy rock. I was in a band early 70s. There was a festival in London, a place called Olympia, and we were on the bill. Sabbath were the headline act. And that was the first time I ever saw them. I just could not believe the simplicity of those riffs that came over so strong, so heavy. And I think it hit a lot of people then that are still with the band now. Longevity, is the key to that. And it's all really based around Tony's playing. But the original lineup was the one. And please God that Ozzy can manage something this week, and God bless him.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, looking over your wonderful career, because you've collaborated with so many different artists, is there anyone that you really didn't collaborate but would have loved to have collaborated with?
Well, getting back to the longevity of these old acts, Purple are still doing it out there. It's not the original. Well, it can't be. For me, the original Purple was it. But they're still out there and they're still doing it. And one guy that I've always wanted to play with on a serious project is Ian Paice. I played with him. He had a band called Pace, Ashen Lord, a side of Purple thing with John Lord and Tony Ashton and Ian Paice, Ashton Lord. I jammed with them when they were looking for a bass player. I think I was probably too ugly, so they got Neil Murray. I'd love to work with Ian Paice again, but I wonder if that could ever happen. My ideal band would be to have a band with Ian Paice, Colin Towns, and others, but I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's people that I would like to have played with, yeah, but you can't do everything. You know? I had that short encounter with playing with Jeff Beck. I'd love to have done more with him, but that was not to be.
And you also crossed paths with Francis Rossi, albeit he was producing an album for John Ducan, who was the guitarist vocalist for Atomic Rooster. What was the experience with crossing paths with Francis Rossi of Status Quo?
That's great. It was a great experience. John Ducan, is a long-time friend from... first met him, he had a band called Andromeda. And it's also where I met Johnny Gustafson as well, through John Ducan. And with Atomic Rooster, they were famously successful, then didn't have a bass player. And some bright spark at a record company said, "Oh, you've got to have a bass player." So I got the gig of playing bass with Atomic Rooster on one album. But for me, that was kind of strange because the beauty of the band was not having a bass player. Anyway, sorry, Francis Rossi, John Ducan was doing a solo album, and he had some interesting songs and booked me for the bass session. And the producer was Francis Rossi Francis was tremendous. He had a great amount of energy. And he played on a couple of the tracks, and he had such a wonderful feel. You know, he's been there with Status Quo since the year dot. And he's one of those people, like myself, that hopefully, how do I describe it? It's that same thing, that British rock feel that sometimes, you know, it doesn't travel across the world too well, but it's a certain magic that Francis Rossi has got. And I think the influence shows on that John Ducan album. You know, Francis Rossi was a great player on that situation, on that album, but he'd never really been appreciated as a producer. And the sound of the album is tremendous. He did a really good job. You know, it was for me. It was at one time it was kind of like playing with Quo, and I loved that because on the session after the first drummer was Paul Hammond from Atomic Rooster, was the first drummer on the album. But he kind of got drunk very early in the morning and continued to get more drunk. And he was kind of fired off the sessions. And Francis brought in Pete Kershaw, who was Status Quo's drummer at the time. And then there was, when keyboards were needed, Andy Bound from Status Quo was brought in. So that for me was a real highlight of those sessions, working with those guys. And yeah, hello, Francis.
As I said, you've crossed paths with definitely British rock royalty, or rock royalty per se. Would you be open at this point in your life to put together a band?
That, you know, a lot of people I would like to work with are no longer here, so that kind of cancelled a lot of it out. But, you know, I've been offered tours, you know, get McCoy back together again. Well, excuse me, I'd have to look for players to learn those songs, and
yeah,
I don't really like the idea of going out and being my own tribute band. I like new experiences. I mean, I had an offer from a European promoter to say, how'd you like the idea, because you've worked in the past with the drummer from Samson and his own band Thunderstick. You enjoy working with him, yes. What do you think about getting together with him? Graham Oliver from Saxon, a couple of other people were mentioned, and doing like I think he called it Heroes of Metal or Heroes of Wobbum or something.
Yeah.
And that's kind of appealing, but, you know, to put something like that together, it has to have fairly big investment.
Yeah, I understand. It seems a shame, because there's so many great songs in Gillan, and, you know, it's great that there was a box set that's been released, and McCoy, The Sound of Thunder. It's a shame that it's not being represented live, and I'm sure a whole new audience of rock lovers would need to hear this sort of music so it doesn't wither on the vine.
Well, it's not, it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody comes along with the right way of making that happen, I'm up for it.
Yep.
The McCoy box set, well, the Gillan box set, the releases of the Gillan material has created a whole new audience for us, and that are starting to appreciate that. And it's crossed over. The McCoy box set is selling, those albums are selling more than they did the first time round. Maybe it's something to do with this little guy here.
Yes, absolutely.
He's a well-known character from the cover of the McCoy box set. It's always a possibility. I'm always open to suggestions, but who knows? We can't go on forever. And I'm amazed and relieved that Ian and Deep Purple are still continuing to be good folk.
Well, John, there's a lot of folk, as I said, the last videos that I did on my channel just went through the roof. So there's a lot of folk that really love what you do, and they are fans of you. And these box sets simply do keep the music alive. So I hope you do get to do something live or record more music, and the John McCoy story continues. But it's been absolutely delightful to talk to you, and to go over your career, and and I really appreciate you sharing the good and the bad and everything in between.
It's all good. I mean, all I can say is ignore all the shit. Just enjoy the music.
Yeah,
that's what's important, and the feelings that were put into that music. Just enjoy it.
Absolutely. So I'll put a link down to Cherry Red, where to get the box set, where to get the Gillan box set, and maybe some links to some video clips, and people can just check out. Once again, John, it's a pleasure to talk to you, and all the very best from Rock Day.
Thank you very much. I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, cheers.